Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again. Hope you're doing well. And thanks for joining me for another mini episode. Today I decided that our mini episode would be on the Gully Dwarves because the last episode, where we talked about the 5 chapters where they're in Zaxxarath, were mainly based around the Gully Dwarves, and we had a lot of discussion in our class about them. So I just thought that we would go ahead and do a mini lesson focusing just on them from that class. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you for the next episode. See ya! So the first thing I'd like to discuss today is the Gully Dwarves, because they are a large chunk of this section. They are, I believe, let's double check, I think it's 3 or 4 of the chapters involve the Gully Dwarves. Let's see. Yep, chapter 17. So there's 4 chapters, which is the most, only one that we read didn't have the Gully Dwarves in them. So they're a big important part of this section that we've read. And we haven't really talked too much yet about the specific races and beings that belong to this world of Krynn. And it's kind of because even though our group has a lot of different people and races inside of it for friends, we don't really know too much or have too much of an encounter with that particular race of people. And so I haven't really focused too much on that aspect yet. But I thought, since we now have a time where we've gotten a large group of Gully Dwarves here, and we have a large section where we actually see the Gully Dwarves and see what they're doing and how they are as a race, we would go ahead and talk about them and go ahead and discuss what their role is a little bit and how they are portrayed and how this race of people is developed, because obviously this is not a regular world. We don't know what the Gully Dwarves are, especially if you've never read it before, or any other stories that might have some kind of portrayal of Gully Dwarves, that these are brand new to you, these type of creature, since they're not humans. We don't know much about them, and so when you come in, the author has to then develop what their characteristics are, who they are, and make it believable for a reader to say, hey, I believe that this is a real type of creature, a real being, and they have their own society and their own, what's the word? Their own culture. There we go. That's what I was trying to think of. So, first of all, we get right away with Flint that he hates these Gully Dwarves. And also that kind of right away when we first meet them as well, a little bit from Flint, you get that these different traits that they have. And they continue to prosper throughout the whole time that we are meeting these Gully Dwarves. And the first one is that they are stupid, which you can kind of tell they are not the smartest dwarves around the block as you continue to talk to them, including the fact that they can't even count right. They know numbers other than 1 and 2, like 4 and 5, but they do not know how to literally count that and what it means to have 4 of something. We know that there are lots of them. They are running around the city, under the city of Zaxxarath. They're everywhere. Tons of them. And they are just running around doing their own thing, and so we know that they are a very prosperous race. We know that they are cowardly, because they definitely do not like any kind of confrontation. As we continue to go through the chapters, we continue to see, even from like the High Bulb's perspective and things like that, that they know that they're cowards, and that's that's obvious to them, is that they do not like conflict, they do not like pain, and they will coward and plead and do whatever they have to other than confront and fight. And then we've got that they're related to the dwarves. Flint mentioned that, or it was either Flint or Tanis that mentioned that they are related to the dwarves. They're just the dwarves don't like them either, so they kind of cast them out of the mountain, supposedly. And they've got a society that is built with clans, They've got the High Bulb, which is the leader of the clan that Boopoo's from. And we know that there's other leaders to other clans that are, and I believe it mentions that there are 3 groups of Gully Dwarves living together underneath Saxarth. So they do have some kind of rulership or organization of a society in that way. We don't really know too much about what the High Bulb does as far as like legislature and rules and laws and things like that. It's not really clear, at least at this moment, from what we've viewed of them. But we do know that they wanted that secret knock to be able to view the High Bulb. And they want to protect the High Bulb because he's the important person. And we know that they have been enslaved by the Draconians. At least this set of clans has been, that are living underneath Saxar. So we know that they're not very prominent, or at least not very, prominent is not the right word, very, along with like their cowardice, they are easily enslaved, they're easily dictated to, though they are kind of running around on their own. As you can see, the Draconians don't really keep too much of a watch on them, but they have enslaved them, and that they are not a free society, and they have let themselves be enslaved by these Draconians. So that's kind of how we see them at this point, kind of their main descriptions, their main qualities, their main aspects of them. Sorry, I keep saying I realize that I'm doing that. I'm just kind of not with it right now. I'm trying to keep thinking what I'm trying to say. So please bear with me, and hopefully I can get my brain going here. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how this race was developed, as well as what the point of their role in the story is. Because obviously they are in here and they're a part of this world, but for them to be such a big portion of the story, and we've already got 4 chapters with them prominently in them, possibly more once we continue reading, that they have a prominent portion or an effect on our main characters. And so we see that this race actually has a reason behind them. We see that there is a reason for them being in the story, especially at this moment. What they contribute, what their reasonings are, and how they are developed to be seen. Because as a reader's perspective and as a writer perspective, it is important to know these different aspects. When you have a race in there that's not a human race, that was like something that we normally know, we have to develop them. We have to see, hey, how are we going to get the reader to know what this race is? And as a reader, you want to know what the race is. So it's important for both aspects to see how it is developed, and it is developed enough that we will be able to understand them and make progress and have an understandable story because they are in it. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about what role they play once they are in there. So first, let's talk about the development. And so we have kind of 3 different ways that they are developed in this story at this time. The first one is Flint. The first thing that we see for them is, once we realize that they are there, is because Flint points out that they're there by their smell, which I find is very interesting that they smell that distinct. But Flint recognizes them by the smell, and he tells the group about them. He tells them how he hated them, how he was captured by them, though he did not want to admit that, and a little bit about their qualities and how they're the worst, and how they're, a part of the dwarves but were cast out, things like that. And so that's where we start to see them come in, and we start to see the very beginning layer of the development that we are given, because Flint gives us this information. So we start off slow. We start off with just a little bit of a prejudice from Flint, but just a little bit of information that we see, and we're going to see, sorry, that's kind of a confusing question. We see the little layer of things from Flint, and then as we continue to go and read through the story, we're going to see how the impression we got at the beginning is going to continue, whether it changes, it stays the same, whether we agree with Flint, disagree, whatever. So first we've got the first little introduction, and then they go out into the hall, and we actually meet the Gully Dwarves. And so the next way that they are developed is by the actual physical manifestation of this race. We see the Gully Dwarves, we have interactions with the Gully Dwarves, we have personalities that stick out. For example, Boo-Poo, who she is in it quite a bit, and you actually see her personality and talk to her and see her at her actions and things like that. And you see the other Gully Dwarves' actions as like they jump on the chains, or as they're running around, or as they're cheering, as they're fighting in the pot. That's all interactions and knowledge that we get based on actually observing and being around and being a part of the Gully Dwarves and having them interact with our story. So that is the next way that they are developed. And it is important because that is the most natural way to get them kind of in there, is that you actually have the characters firsthand see what they are. We aren't just being described to, and it's not just in like the narration. We are finding out these aspects from a little bit of coordination and being told about it, but also a little bit, mostly, not just a little bit, mostly by how we see these Gully Dwarves behaving in reaction to our main characters and how they interact with them and what we see from them on a action basis. And then we see a little bit kind of the same kind of concept as we see how they handle their situation. So we see them acting as they normally would no matter what. This is what they're doing. They're cheering for the people that are in the pots because this is the most excitement they've had the whole time or whatever. But then we see what happens when there's actual problems and concerns, like Boo-Poo with, even though she's bespelled, okay, how is she going to handle the situation where they have to go against all the big bosses? She finds this other passageway, and she's very calm and collected. And we see these other Gully Dwarves that then at first, when they first see the intruders, the heroes, they are not very happy. They're very hostile. They're angry. So their situation of them seeing a danger presented that they're not sure about, they get hostile, and though they are cowardly, they are mean toward them. And that then they would go if they got... Sorry about that. That was my phone. Let me make sure that's on silent. And then they would go and run away. Or like with the High Bulb, we've got that the High Bulb was so cowardly that when he heard that there was an army coming, he was hiding under his desk and they had to pry him out. So you see that the cowardly as well as you see the mean portions. And they even mean to each other. When Boo-Poo comes up and she knocks on the door and does the knock wrong, they're very hostile to each other. At least in the way they're speaking, and the way that when they don't agree, they get pretty into it pretty quickly. So you see based on the situations that they're in, you see based on them just interacting or just being around in the environment, and you see from Flint's point of view, which Flint continues to interject his feelings on the matter as they continue to go through the Gully Dwarves. Now for the second portion, as what do we experience as a reader from these Gully Dwarves, and what role do they play in this story? How do they affect the story? What is their purpose for being in this story at this moment? So we see that they're a little bit of twofold for their purpose. We've got the first purpose, which is to be an obstacle. That's what we think they're going to be in general when we first meet them, is they are an obstacle that must be overcome. And they are pretty easy to overcome as an obstacle because Raslin puts that magic spell on them and they become friends. At least that portion of the Gully Dwarves becomes friends and protects them. But they are, in its essence, at least at the beginning, an obstacle. That they're like, okay, these Gully Dwarves are in the way of us getting to where we want to go, and we have to find a way to brush them aside, a way to make them so they don't matter, make it so they won't go and cause more problems by getting the Draconians involved and things like that. So at first they are a problem and an obstacle that must be resolved. And then the second part is after they overcome this obstacle, at least at the basis that their obstacle, we do have another obstacle with them later, which we'll discuss, but at the very beginning, as they make the friend spell on them, we've got Boo who comes up, and she is like the main person. We're not really sure why the friend spell hits her more than everybody else, or maybe it's just because she's smarter. I don't know. We don't really know. Let me know if you have any comments on it or anything that you want to say and feelings about it and about Boo, whether you think you know why she kind of steps up or whatever. But we do know that she steps up and that then she becomes their guide. Out of all the other Gully Dwarves that like Razlin and admire him or whatever, they do end up helping him out a little bit, like those ones that jump on the chain to make the other pot go down, so that way the Draconians aren't coming up anymore. But a lot of them are simple-minded. They just kind of adore him, wander around with him, want to be with him, close to him. But Boo-Boo's the one that's actually pretty smart, and she's like, okay, what can I do to please you? And Razlin says, we need to get to the dragon's lair. How are we going to do that? Or how do we get around the big bosses? We don't want any of those. And she's like, okay, I'm going to take you to the High Bulb. And she guides them through Zaxxarath. She is the guide character, at least at this present moment. She is the whole reason that they can get through it without all this fighting and without the dragon knowing that they are underneath the city so far. Especially when you see the moment when the dragon's talking to the Draconian, and the Draconians all think that they're still on the upper levels running around, and nobody seems to know where they're at. That's because Boo-Poo was able to take them through the secret path, though gross path that it was. But they were able to go through the secret path, and she was able to guide them then to the High Bulb. And the High Bulb is also a bit twofold. He is the epitome of what the Gully Dwarves are in a way. We've got the Gully Dwarf side where there's an obstacle still, and he does become more of an obstacle because he has now alerted the dragon to the presence of the heroes and that they are going to be coming to her lair. And so he has now caused problems. He is an obstacle in their way. They were not able to brush him aside because they didn't realize that he was an obstacle, but now he has created more problems and has created something that's going to be even more significant. But he is also their guide because he had that map that Boo-Poo then read. So again, Boo-Poo is important for the guide position. But the High Bulb also has that role where he had the map, that without the map, they would not have any landmarks to know about anything. Obviously, the map isn't very good, and they even joke about how the High Bulb cannot read it anymore, which he can't. But he is helping them, guide them to the lair. And Boo-Poo is also helping guide them to the lair. So, really, they are a very important part for Zaxxarath because without them, they could not make it as far as they did. But with them, they are also having problems with getting around the city and trying not to be known by the dragon, which happened anyway because of the High Bulb. So, let me know what else you think about the Gully Dwarves, if anything, any more thoughts or concerns or comments, and let me know.